At the beginning of the 19th century, when industry was becoming America's religion, Brooklyn was considered the hinterland of unreachable Manhattan, and Greenpoint in turn, the hinterland of Brooklyn. For immigrants, it was one of the key gateways to America. For some, the beginning and the end of their journey. In the second half of the 20th century, the area between Newtown Creek and the highway connecting Brooklyn with Manhattan was known as Little Poland. You could hear people speaking Polish, shopping at Polish stores, visiting Polish doctors, barbers, lawyers, and restaurants. But there was never a place like this in Poland. Watch the Greenpoint Tales.
My name is Pawel Wierzbicki. I'm an attorney and a partner at Block Hotel & Murphy. I came to the US in 2014. I was 24 at that time. I graduated from the Faculty of Law at the University of Warsaw, and right after school I started my American dream in Florida at the University of Florida in Gainesville, where I did my law school. Came to New York in 2015, where I took my bar exam and started practicing law. My first place of residence, so-called, here was actually a few blocks away from here. In Greenpoint, I was sharing a basement apartment with 4 other roommates. Vividly remember that room in the basement with no windows. I was actually shocked when I came here. You know, Greenpoint was the first place of reference when I came from Miami, and I started looking for an apartment. I was shocked that I couldn't afford anything, but I got that room for $700. Yeah, basement room without windows. I was sharing that basement apartment with Andrzej, who was a roofer. There was also a psychologist from Poland who was a sitter, and a funny guy who's actually was my friend at a later time, who was a bartender. I have a pretty thick skin, I would say. So of course there were moments when I was really down. I didn't know when I was going at that time, and but I saw the light in the tunnel. I worked really hard, and I made it. But I remember those moments when it was really tough. But you know, as every immigrant in the U.S., especially in New York, has its own story. You just gotta muscle through your problems and keep your chin up. This is a funny story. My first court appearance, I'm traveling to Harlem at that time, and I'm walking into the court, and I see the name of the judge on the door, and it's Jan Kowalski, which is basically John Doe. I couldn't believe that was that, but that's my first court appearance. And when it comes to cases, I remember that first case when a grandmother of a severely injured person contacted me 1 year from the day of the accident. And that gentleman, he was an immigrant from Poland. He did not remember where the accident happened, he just remembered he fell off a ladder, but he didn't remember the date of the accident or where he was working at the time, where he was taken to, the name of the hospital, nothing. So I had to reconstruct basically the entire story and gather the evidence and prove his case in court, where his employer showed up and testified that this man never worked for us, and he was in a terrible condition. That was my first case. I was able to obtain very substantial compensation for him and send him back to Poland, where he's now. I represent many Polish immigrants, and we are tough people. With a Polish construction worker, it's always the case that I basically have to talk to that person's family to start it before we start a case, because those guys want to return to work as soon as possible, even if they're disabled. So every single case with a Polish construction worker starts basically the same. It's either there's no initial treatment, which it's a complication in the case, like personal injury case. It's difficult to prove that a person got injured on the job site, because they either are being manipulated by the employer who pressures that person not to start a lawsuit, always promising money, and that the employer is going to cover treatment. So those workers, they stay at home, they do not seek medical treatment, and any accident case, if you want to prove an accident case, you gotta secure the evidence, preserve the evidence within the first week, and it's always tough, because then the hospital records say that the person didn't have an accident at work, maybe he fell at home, which is not true. So those are basically challenges with Polish people that I encounter. Undocumented workers have the same rights as any US citizen or permanent resident. Doesn't matter either for workers' compensation rights or any civil lawsuit, not at all. I actually represent this man, and it was, again, this was a scenario where the employee fell off a ladder at a renovation site in Manhattan, stood up with pain, refused an ambulance, got back to his van, drove to the employer's site, and then got home, was able to make a phone call, notified his supervisor about the accident, about the fall, and then 2 days later, he was found by his partner at the time, laying on the ground. He's taken to the hospital, and hospital records and the diagnosis is that his stroke and paralysis is related to the untreated condition, not the fall itself. So then you have the insurance company who are denying any benefits. This man is, this is a life-altering event. He's disabled for life. His left side is paralyzed. Now we have to prove the case. A case where you have even emergency doctors testifying against you, because their opinion is that this is not related to the fall. This is related to the condition that he didn't treat for. So imagine a case like that, you have a man who needs help. No medical treatment will be covered. He's not getting any benefits. He's in his 50s. He worked all his life as an electrician. So this is a responsibility that you have to take on. When you take on a case like that, you have to think about that person, his future, his life, his family, and you have to discredit medical doctors, not even medical doctors who work for the insurance company, but emergency doctors. And I was able to prove that. The judge sided with me. I was able to secure substantial compensation for that man, and he's secured for life, at least when it comes to medical benefits and weekly payouts, so he can survive. This case left me sleepless, because I remember meeting with this gentleman in the hospital and seeing him in the state of despair. When you go home after a meeting like that, when you sign a case like that, it's not easy, that's all I can say. Oh, Greenpoint has changed tremendously. I don't think there's real division between Williamsburg and Greenpoint anymore. I think these two neighborhoods blend into one. So you still see, some Polish places where you can have good pierogies, and best places where you can have a cocktail or spend some time with friends. The old Greenpoint was very hermetic. I think that every single person who lived here spoke Polish, but it was way back in the days. When I moved here, it was already gentrified, and I was shocked to expect. I didn't know what to expect, and I was shocked by seeing what I saw. That means that it was a very, I think this is one of the best neighborhoods in New York. So I really enjoyed living here, even though it was a basement apartment. I would say that if we forget to pass on those values that we were raised with. It's going to be very hard for us Polish Americans to have a vibrant and significant community on the East Coast, not only business-wise, but also when it comes to politics. So I think that's mostly that's the role, to pass and be connected with the new generation, and do not forget about the previous one. The generation who came here in the 80s, 90s, they came here for economic reasons, and they just worked, 2-3 shifts just to provide for the family. And I think their goal at that time was to return to Poland. So that's why they were not anticipating that they're gonna raise kids here, they're gonna stay here, and they were not involved in politics. They wouldn't really go and vote. I think that's one of the major reasons why we don't have major representation. I think there's still big population who, and I'm talking about people who were born and raised in Polish families, who are different right now. They're thinking differently, and we start getting people involved in local politics, like let's say in Queens. So I think there's a little shift, not substantial, but I think it may change. When people ask me if I feel more Polish or more American, I would say that I always play double card. When I'm in Europe, I'm American, and when I'm here, I'm more European, I'm Polish. But truthfully, jokes aside, one of the partners told me this a while back, and he's fourth generation Italian American, but he told me, Pawel, you do not understand what you have. You have this identity, that DNA that I would say many people are looking for, and it's special that you have, that you can identify with something, and you should always remember about your DNA. So I'll never forget that, and I think there's a lot of wisdom to his words. I do appreciate that I have my native language, that I feel Pole, I'm a proud Pole, and I will never forget about my DNA, and this is how I'm gonna raise my son. I can't imagine him not speaking Polish, because I have a lot of friends who are struggling with the same issue. I mean, kids don't want to speak Polish at some point, and they will reply in English to you. But whenever I'm in a public place, even though people surrounding me do not speak any Polish, do not understand Polish, I still speak Polish to him in the presence of these people, because think about this child. You speak Polish at home, you go into public places and you start speaking English. Some kids may just think, well, maybe that is a shame, but I definitely feel I'm a Polish American, and I'm an American with Polish values.